ANC chairperson Panyaza Lesufi has called for the protection of officials as well as whistleblowers from targeted hits. He made the opening remarks at the party's roll call meeting, which is underway at FNB Stadium in Newzroom. The party is also expected to lay out its national action plan for local government elections next year.
The message I suspect all councillors wants to bring to the National Executive Committee members of the ANC, it's one message. To be a councillor in this era is a difficult task, Comrade President. Comrade President, our councillors are not only under attack from our communities. There are people that are hired. There are people that are resourced. There are people that are on a mission to kill councillors, literally, Comrade President. So as we convene here, Comrade President, it's very important that they need not only to protect our councillors and our officials, but they need to also protect whistleblowers that are exposing corruption in our municipalities and across state institutions should be emphasized.
Well, let's bring in Professor of Political Sciences at UNISA, Prof. Dirk Kotze. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on. What do you make of what Panyaza Lesufi had to say there? This is a national roll call. It's set to set the agenda for improved service delivery across municipalities. The last time we had a gathering like this was after the 2021 elections. And the issue that Panyaza Lesufi chooses to hone in on is protecting councillors and whistleblowers. What do you make of that?
Good afternoon. I think this is something which they anticipate that it can become a problem, especially in the run-up to the election. We've seen in the past in local government elections, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, that the nomination process created a lot of instability, especially in the ANC. To some extent in the IFP also, and in some extreme cases, candidates were actually eliminating each other in a physical sense. So it is a period of high risk for potential candidates, and it is also a period of high risk for those who are involved in the decision-making process, the nomination process. So I think this is part of it, of what he is possibly referring to. Is that, and what we are seeing, especially in a province like KwaZulu-Natal, there's also going to be obviously very intense competition between MK Party and the ANC there. But what we've seen as a result of Jungle and Kwanazi's exposures is that there's a lot of internal competition within the different arms of the ANC or the government, more specifically the ANC's part of the government, and that there is the possibility of infiltration of outside groups, including syndicates, for that. And so what he opened up is the possibility that one cannot exclude the fact that those people have even an interest in who's going to stand as candidates ultimately.
Right. And the reason why I'm asking you this question, Prof. Kotze, is because obviously we've been dealing with the issue of whistleblowers and protecting whistleblowers for some time. But the fact of the matter is the councillors themselves have oftentimes been implicated or in some way have been implicated in funds being diverted to their own pockets. I just find it interesting that he would choose to hone in on that issue when there seems to have been a paralysis around protecting whistleblowers and even the prosecution or going after those who are calling the hits. Babita Deokaran obviously comes to mind.
Yes, again, I would say the current situation that we have and the commissions now related to the Kwanazi exposures very much emphasizes that. But over and above that, I mean, what we've seen, I think it was last week, with a lawyer that has been killed. Yeah. The fact that there is almost on a weekly basis, we see incidents of where whistleblowers or persons who have exposed, not even whistleblowers, but just persons who have been given information or been at the wrong place at the wrong time, have been killed. So this is a high risk in general. And I think because this focus is now very specifically on local government elections, there's lots of opportunities for that also. In the case of local government, there is obviously the problem of corruption and collusion and mismanagement, but at the same time opportunities, contracts that are available at local government level and that can be mismanaged or can become part of a corrupt environment. So I think that is where he comes from, is to say, well, this is one aspect, which is in a sense one part of the malaise within the local government environment in general, and makes it very difficult sometimes for local representatives, board councillors and other councillors, in order to not to be affected and not to be pulled into this and not to become ultimately corrupted, because that is one of the key issues about local government. Is part of the problems of lack of service delivery is that either it's persons who are not competent to do that work, or contracts that are given to contractors who don't deliver the goods, who don't deliver the results because of the corrupt relationships that exist. So it is certainly one of the key components. But what is interesting is what you are, I think, referring to is that what President Ramaphosa said yesterday, as part of his feedback after the 2 days of or even with the introduction of the National Executive Committee, and the plan of action of the ANC with respect to the election and local government in general, it did not necessarily refer to this particular point there.
Yeah, I mean, corruption thrives at local government. We know that just because of the numbers. But the Auditor General has told us just the staggering amounts of money that gets siphoned off from local government. The Electricity Minister also told our reporter on the scene there at FNB Stadium this morning. And this perhaps goes some way to explaining the level of service delivery in most of our municipalities. Jose Ramagopa says of the 257 municipalities in the country, only 10% have professionalized engineers who are working in the provision of power. I mean, that says it all, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it's good that you mentioned this point, because it's ultimately goes down to the financing model for local government. And that is something that has been discussed in various quarters already. The fact that local government only receives 10% of the national budget, because remember, we don't pay tax to local government except for the properties, but we basically pay tax at the national level, and it must be downscaled or down distributed to the provincial and the local level. And the local level only receives 10%, the national and the provincial together 90%. And that's part of the issue, is that the fiscal relationships at the moment are not conducive for financially sustainable local authorities. And that's one of the points that President Ramaphosa referred to actually in his introduction. As part of the action plan, is that must receive attention, because it is about municipalities paying their service delivery suppliers like Eskom and the water boards, but at the same time also when they have contracts, that they are paid by those contractors, including sometimes government institutions. So it is very much a financial matter that's, I would say, at the core of some of the main issues at local government level.
The ANC is obviously on a mission ahead of the elections next year. We know that it scraped by last year in a shocking just 40% of the national outcomes in the national election, which is still something that the party is recovering from. In the Western Cape, it's doing particularly badly. It's got coalition governments. It's in some municipalities hanging on by a thread. So now it's crunch time. We've got 14 months to go until local government elections. President Cyril Ramaphosa last week was in the Northwest. He visited the Ditsobotla local municipality. Service delivery is a massive challenge across the province, but that municipality has been placed under administration 9 times now. I wonder whether today's roll call, as the ANC calls it, is enough to pave the way for a local government election that isn't even more devastating than last year.
Yes, it will be interesting to see what is actually going to happen today. It's a strange name that they gave it, to call it that as they do, as a roll call, because it's more about who's present and who not. But in this case, I think it's very much, will possibly be very much focused on this action plan that they have in mind. But then at the same time, to say to the local councillors that you have about a year, and this is absolute crunch time for you. If you can turn around the public perception about you and you can deliver good results, positive results, even if they are limited, but so long as there's a new perception that starts to emerge, that you are actually doing something and that you are giving attention to your ward members, and that you try your best, then hopefully there might be a change. But I think for the ANC in general, it's very late in the day in order to be able to make a turnaround, because the results of last year, but at provincial and national level, but especially at provincial level, still have to filter through now to the local elections. And I think that means that the ANC is at the point where they are going to lose even more. And I think it will still have, very specifically, be relevant for the big metros, because Johannesburg and Tshwane, there is intense competition between the ANC and the DA, but even more in a metro like the Nelson Mandela Bay, there the ANC and the DA has exactly the same number of seats in the metro council. So it is very evenly balanced there, and any changes will be to the advantage of the one or the other side. In some other provinces, I think, for example, Limpopo province is going to be a test for the ANC. It is the province where they are doing the best, or did the best in last year's election at the provincial level, 72% compared to the national average of 40%. But now we've seen that the provincial chairperson, Stanley Matabate, have stepped, as he called it, stepped aside. So there is clearly some issues in the province, and it looks like it has to do with him and the Premier. But these are the type of issues that the ANC will have to deal with in order to stabilize their situation for next year's election.
Well, it's clear now that voters in the country know the difference between a photo opportunity and something that delivers actual service delivery.
Yes, that's for sure. And I think, in the past, maybe councillors could get away with it, or even the provincial governments, but the public is not more satisfied with that. And I think what we are seeing now is that what we in political science call is that voters become much more of a rational choice voters. It means that they put the choices of the different parties next to each other, and it's not based on whether their family is supporting a particular party or they were born almost within a particular party. They now make each case a choice of which party they are going to support. And that makes it more fluid for the different parties. It's more difficult to predict what is going to be the outcome. But it is also at the same time very, very much more dependent on what are the performances of the different parties. And therefore, parties that are in government and doing well have an advantage over parties who are, especially smaller parties who are not in government or who are first-come parties, that this is their first election.
Yeah, so voting is based on service delivery, and I think a big part of it as well is around corruption and how decisive a party is on issues of corruption. Prof, let me thank you for your time. Professor Dirk Kotze is with UNISA.